What's going on, LSWvians? This is me, the Butler at 86, and today this video is a album retrospective for the album that you see directly below here to your right hand side. This is an album that I absolutely enjoy. It might not be everybody's taste, but everybody has heard the name Genesis. Uh, People would probably associate Genesis with the names Phil Collins, Peter Gabriel. But this is an album that continued the trend of Genesis long after Phil Collins had left. Uh, this is the album that I would describe as the album that basically quietly remembered who Genesis used to be. And I'm going to commit what a lot consider a Genesis crime, and I'm going to say out loud on the internet that I actually like calling all stations. That's right, people. You heard it from me. I like calling all stations, and not in it's an underrated kind of way. I mean, I genuinely enjoy it. In fact, I take this album over a lot of the '80s Genesis output. Yep, including that stuff. Because here's the thing: calling all stations isn't Genesis trying to chase relevance. It's Genesis doing something that they hadn't really done in years and turning inward. This album came out in 1997 after Phil Collins had left the band, and instead of replacing Phil with someone who sounded like Phil, Tony Banks and Mike Rutherford went in the opposite direction. They chose Ray Wilson of Stiltskin, whose voice is darker, heavier, and far more restrained. That decision alone tells you a lot. This isn't pop Genesis. There's no punchlines, no radio-friendly hooks designed to explode out of car speakers. This album is moody, patient, and serious, and honestly, that puts it in much closer spirit to the Peter Gabriel era than most people like to admit. Right from the start, the title track, Calling All Stations, sets the tone, and it's atmospheric, slow burning, and dramatic in a very early Genesis way. Tony Banks' keyboards don't sparkle, they loom. Ray Wilson doesn't perform, he inhabits the song, and it feels closer to Wind and Wuthering than Invisible Touch. And you can tell by the way the album is recorded, that's not an accident. One of the biggest strengths of the album is its commitment to mood. People criticize it for being mid-tempo and dark, but that's exactly what I like about it. This is Genesis trusting atmosphere over immediacy. The songs take their time, they unfold rather than announce themselves, and that's something the band moved away from in the 80s when everything had to hit fast and hit hard. I mean, look at Invisible Touch for an example. It hit fast, it hit hard, and it was just there in your face for everything you want to see. Like, they lost their prog roots a little bit, and this album sort of reinvigorated the prog roots that made them what they were. I mean, you look at tracks like Shipwrecked and Not About Us, they lean into emotional ambiguity, they're reflective rather than catchy, and while they don't scream for attention, they reward repeat listens. This is headphone Genesis, late night Genesis, not turn it up at a party Genesis. You know, like Invisible Touch, for example. Let's talk about Ray Wilson for a moment, because I think history's been really unfair to him with this particular album. He wasn't trying to be Peter Gabriel or Phil Collins. He was trying to be himself. He brought a grounded, almost stoic presence to the band. His voice has weight, but it also has restraint, which fits material perfectly on songs like There Must Be Some Other Way. And he sounds introspective in a way that recalls Gabriel era emotional distance rather than Collins era warmth. And I think the biggest weakness of the album is the fact that he didn't get much songwriting credit in on the album at all, because most of it was written before he'd even joined the band, which wasn't his fault. How can you fault a singer coming in to an album that's basically already been written? You can't. He's singing exactly what he's meant to be singing. He is doing the job that he was required to do. If they'd have been given another chance to do another album, I think that they probably could have gone another few years with the same lineup. I mean, you look at, like I say, There Must Be Some Other Way. That song, by the way, is probably my favourite of the album. It's one of the album's strongest tracks. It builds slowly, relies on tension instead of hooks, and lets the atmosphere do the work. This is exactly the kind of songwriting Genesis used to excel at before they became a singles machine. And the lot of the single machine things that I'm referring to are from the 80s when you had Phil Collins doing Abacab, then you had their self-titled Genesis album, also called the Shapes album, and then you had Invisible Touch, We Can't Dance, etc. That was when they sort of commercialized themselves and went straight away from the sound that made them edgy and feel like an actual rock band. Anyway, moving on. The Dividing Line deserves a special mention too. If anyone says Genesis lost their edge completely by the 90s, point them here. This track is aggressive, driving, and tense. It has real urgency, not nostalgia, it's conviction. This is Genesis reminding you they were never just a soft rock band. Even Congo, the album's most accessible track, fits better than people give it credit for. It fits around all the other tracks perfectly. And it's rhythmic, hypnotic, and built around repetition rather than a big chorus. It's not pop Genesis, it's ritualistic. Strip away expectations, and it actually aligns more with the band's earlier experimental instincts. Another reason I prefer this album to much of the 80s era is that it feels honest. There's no sense that Genesis is trying to be fashionable. They're not chasing MTV. They're not writing songs designed for stadium sing-alongs. This album feels like Tony Banks and Mike Rutherford making the music they wanted to make at that point, even if it wasn't going to dominate the charts. And yes, Tony Banks' keyboards dominate the album, but that's also on brand for classic Genesis. This is a composer-driven record. Melody takes a backseat to texture, tension, and progression. Again, very Gabriel era philosophy. I mean, commercially, that's where the album story gets framed as a failure. I mean, it charted well in Europe and found an audience that appreciated its seriousness. The real issue wasn't quality, it was timing. By 1997, the world had actually moved on music-wise. I mean, you had the start of grunge, you had the start of, all heavy metal, new metal, all them sort of parts of rock that really hadn't really given way to prog rock to really be strong as it was. So it was a bit of a heartbreak situation, really. The world had moved on music wise, and Genesis wasn't interested in playing the nostalgia game yet. The cancelled North American tour didn't feel like rejection so much as misalignment. The album was never going to thrive in an arena rock environment. It was too introspective for that. In retrospect, Calling All Stations feels less like a misstep and more like a quiet epilogue. It was them stepping away from pop dominance and briefly reconnecting with what they used to be. A group interested in mood, complexity, and emotional distance. It's not flashy, it's not immediate, but it's sincere. And honestly, I'd rather listen to a flawed but thoughtful album like this than another perfectly polished 80s hit factory record. It's not the sound of them failing at all, it is the sound of them remembering. But that is the end of my retrospective there, people. If you like what you have seen today, please give us a follow, like, and subscribe for more LSW goodness. And I have been the Butler, and I will see you again on our next video.